The views expressed on Skeptically Speaking are not necessarily the views of this station, its affiliates, sponsors, or advertisers.
Bring it on! The skeptics await your letter. Your call, tweet, homing, pigeon, whatever. Desiree Shell gonna raise a little hell, metaphorically that is. 'Cause we're skeptically speaking.
Welcome to Skeptically Speaking. I'm Julieta Delos Santos, sitting in for Desiree Shell. My guests today are Dr. Jayne Gackenbach and Teace Snyder. Dr. Jayne Gackenbach is a video game and dream researcher and professor in the Department of Psychology at Grant MacEwan University in Edmonton, Alberta. Teace Snyder is a lifelong writer and gamer who attended Grant MacEwan University but never had his mother for a professor. We're talking about their book, Play Reality, How Video Games Are Changing Everything, about myths behind video gaming. Thank you so much to the both of you for being here.
Good, glad to be here.
So the first question I'll ask is about the book. Why was it written in such a way to engagingly talk about video games?
My original intent, Teace and I talked about writing a book for quite a while, but it became clear to me I teach an introduction to video games course here in the Department of Computer Science, and it was real clear that students who are basically gamers who want to be game designers were very resistant to listening to a psychologist. And so I needed to come up with a way to try to communicate to them, so I thought I would do, a book. And since I'd been talking to my son, who's a serious gamer, that seemed an obvious collaboration. But it was his idea, and a great idea, to have the narrator's voice be a gamer.
The reason that the book was written the way that it was is because textbooks are boring when it comes to this subject matter, and we wanted to write something that would not only be a clear and concise and fair representation of the information as it really is, but also one that would be entertaining to read. So that was really first and foremost.
I'm a gamer myself, so I found a lot of the language in it I could really relate to a lot.
Good.
So I really like that. One of the things that was really interesting in the book is why are board, card, and puzzle games, why do those attract the most online play?
Basically, they're all casual genre. That means short games. They're easy to learn. They require enough attention so it gets your mind off your day-to-day problems, and thus the research has shown they're associated with the relaxation response, and thus they're wildly popular, especially among women and middle-aged women. Although now they're moving into the phone, your phone games, your tablet games, and these all sort of portable computing and games is, of course, the direction the entire industry is going.
Now, is this something that's more prevalent in North American games, versus Asian games?
I don't know. Depending where in Asia, but certainly Korea, Japan, and parts of China, gaming is wildly popular. And there's places in third world countries where there's mobile devices, but there's no desktop internets, except perhaps for instance, in Korea, they're called bangs, internet cafes. And so I would expect that given the extent to which gaming is going to these mobile devices, you would see it there as well. Okay. Or probably even more so.
So in the book, it talks a lot about video game culture. Can you just describe very quickly what is video game culture?
Video game culture is essentially the emergence of culture within the parameters of a game or surrounding the game, and that is often some sort of kind of like a hybrid of internet culture as well as gaming culture, and then it kind of stems back to the real world from there. So it's like culture in a virtual artificial reality, and then subsequently tracing that back to the real world and the effects that it has.
Yeah, so the way that I talk about it in my courses is there's the culture of the gamers that's within the game, like Teace just mentioned, and that surrounds the game. So the blogs and the stuff that you can buy. There's a whole website devoted to crafts about gaming. I'm a crafter, so I was thrilled to see this. There's this knitted sweater that was made. I made a table for my son in the shape of a Nintendo controller. All of these are elements, cultural artifacts, as an anthropologist might talk about. And so it's both what surrounds gaming and what's within the game.
Oh, wow. So then why are there societal misconceptions about video game culture?
Okay, why are there societal misconceptions about video game culture? Really, I'd blame the media for it, in the largest part. It's also just a historical truism of people to disregard any new paradigm shift in media. And this is akin to what was happening when radio or television were really changing the landscape of media and communication. And now it's happening all over with video games, and a lot of old-timers just don't want to hear it. They think that it's ruining the next generation, the same way as the generation before them thought that rock and roll was going to ruin, or comic books or movies, or now video games. It's the same thing.
It's a sort of a vicious cycle, and it very much, the media is very much a part of it. But also, educators become a part of it, parents become a part of it. If it's new, it's frightening. And so I'm listening to a book now called Cognitive Surplus, where he argues, as an elderly professor, baby boom generation, he's talking to his students who are in, teens and early 20s, and the idea that your experience of media was purely audience. You had no way to have a public voice. It's foreign, and because in this day and age, including in gaming, including online, including with television shows, it is a dynamic. Everyone has a voice. It's co-created. It's emergent, hive mind, as Anonymous would say, and so that. This kind of perspective has just changed the landscape.
We're going to talk more a little bit about that in a bit. And I'm just wondering, now, what is the difference between a gamer and a hardcore gamer?
Depth of immersion and frequency of play.
Yeah.
Is there a certain boundary? Can you say X many days and hours you're a gamer and then you're a hardcore gamer?
There likely is a criteria by which one could go about specifically nailing that down, but typically it tends to generally be reflected in the compulsion of an individual to game, or basically just they dedicate more of themselves and are more comfortable with that. And there isn't a particular number of hours, but there is that inclination, which you can just really, really pick up on whether or not someone has it, or whether they're just going to spend a couple of hours playing a game and then leave it alone.
Yeah, I mean, some people, as my son, self-identify as a gamer. Now, that said, that he's a very serious writer as well and filmmaker. But that is, that's his major relaxation device. So I self-identify as a crafter. We all have that. And so in some sense, that's a great way to differentiate. But as a researcher, I tend to get a bit more precise about it, and that precision can lead me astray. I would much prefer to just look, okay, do you self-identify as a gamer? But I don't always have that luxury, so I'll look at things as the frequency of play as a function of daily, weekly, whatever, or I'll look at the number of games played or the genre of play, or I'll look at how long ago did you start playing. There's a variety of ways in the game studies research that we define it. But I think Teace's point about it's self-defined, do you perceive yourself, is really the bottom line.
And can you be considered a gamer if you only play serious games? So I guess based on what you just said, is it acceptable if someone only plays serious games for them to say, yes, I'm a gamer?
Serious games are basically real-world video games, or for the purpose of educating or training a populace or an individual. And serious games have applications in the real world, either utilizing game mechanics or reward structures, or essentially playing a video game to yield some sort of result or reward in the real world. And as to whether or not someone who strictly played that kind of game would subsequently be categorized as a gamer, I think that's going to become more apparent as we evolve culturally and start to not only engage in serious games on a more regular basis as individuals, but start to expect them of our education systems and things of that sort. And when that happens, whether or not people are going to self-identify as gamers, or whether or not everyone's just going to be implicitly a gamer as a result of the education they've received, is the real question.
Yeah, and I think we saw a little bit of a look at that. Now, Juliet, I know you're familiar with education literature because you're in education, that children are thrilled to death with the math games or the learn your vowel games in preschool or very early grade school. Mm-hmm. But what happens is that the games, the edutainment type of games, did not evolve as quickly as the children. And they learned that it's a whole lot more fun to play purely entertainment games. And so they made that transition, leaving this serious game formula. I think that as the serious games catch up to the sophistication of the entertainment market, then those distinctions will become very blurred.
You're listening to Skeptically Speaking, and I'm talking with Dr. Jayne Gackenbach and Teace Snyder about Play Reality, how video games are changing everything. We are discussing the myths behind video gaming. One of the really interesting parts that I've read in the book is that there are a listing of familiar issues of concern for parents whose children game. And some of the concerns listed were aggression, addiction, attention, effects on the brain, learning, and socializing. Mm-hmm. What makes these issues familiar? And what does the research have to say about these issues?
That's a big question. You want to kind of pick one?
Sure, we'll start at the first one. So what makes these issues familiar?
I think that comes out of the history of media use. And so, for instance, the idea of TV violence and decadence, or having violence or horror movies, on the screen. And Teace has a wonderful tell the anecdote about vampires or something, Teace, that you say in the book.
There used to be a mandate in Hollywood that the monsters in horror movies had to be killed by the end of the film, otherwise the audience supposedly wouldn't be able to go about leading their day-to-day life because they'd be too afraid. So that's just absurd.
Well, but initially it wasn't. Initially, again, that fearfulness that we now see in terms of video games, that was there, but I'm going to really show a monster on the screen. People are going to suspend all reality, and we have a moral obligation, and it's just like you couldn't show too much cleavage. It was a whole documentary done on how much cleavage you could do for each of these stars in the 30s and 40s. There were these sorts of taboos and these fears. But of course, with time, we've gotten over them. We realize, well, all right, people do seem to manage. That doesn't to say that there isn't, that there isn't some research to support these concerns. But they're so caught up in the newness of the media that it's very difficult, at least initially, to separate it out.
And Jayne, do you find, can the research keep up with the effects of video games upon people?
That's such a good question. I don't think so. I mean, and it's not just video games. It's like the use of social media. It's the whole sort of anonymous as hive mind, hackers that they're representing a collective consciousness rather than an individual, mandate. It is changing so fast, gaming being part of this whole landscape of electronic media, and it's changing society so fast. We're playing catch up as researchers, and that's pretty standard in the social sciences. So the original research came out on people who were attractive. Are they something that you would want to date, someone who's attractive? And of course, that's what you found is that yes. Well, there's exceptions to that, but in any case, initially they found yes, and that's sort of like proving the obvious. But then on the other hand, social scientists will also go in and show something that we thought was obvious was not true at all. And of course, that's what's happened. Not true at all, but that's what's happened somewhat with the gaming and modeling violence, is that while there is an effect in terms of, like, for instance, the aggressive emotions, aggressive thoughts, aggressive behaviors, a critique of that literature that was really, really very, very good, and there's been a bunch of them at this point, has basically pointed out that yes, there's effect, but if you want to look at why is it that Tommy hit Joey, 2% or 3% of the reason Tommy hit Joey was exposure to video games. That whether his mom and dad hit each other, is he living in poverty, is there drugs in the household, does he have an aggressive personality which shows inheritability, all of those things that we know affect violence account for larger percentages.
And I'm just wondering, Teace, since you self-identify as a gamer, have you found yourself subject to any of these effects from video gaming?
Look, I think that in regards to your question of where this sort of thing comes from, it comes from, one, the fact that there is just a little bit of truth to it, although it has been largely misrepresented by the media, and as a result of that, people have been largely misinformed about what the true effects are. The other part is that it's just in our nature to explore certain parts of what video games allow us. So one aspect of that is violence. Another is that it's indulgence, which is the prospect of addiction. And so there are all of these kind of things that are tied into very real issues that have either been blown out of proportion or exaggerated by the media and subsequently, fed into our fear-mongering. So as to how that's affected me personally, I'd say that the societal conception of video games has had more of a negative effect on me than the games themselves. And similarly, by way of playing them throughout the course of my life and having them as a part of my development, I regard both their influence and myself as better because of it.
That's a nice point. Yeah, that really is. And that's, in fact, I've found more and more of that. It's something that in a colloquialism is called gamer shame, because they've become so aware of this negative attitude that if you're not a gamer, they become, defensive. And I've seen that with my students over and over again. And that's too bad, because if you look in the early literature, before there was this negative stereotype, gaming was associated with all kinds of healthful effects. And it still is. I mean, that is very definitely there. But it basically carries a stigma. And so that if you're passionate about gaming, and again, it's not that there can't be problems, there absolutely can be, but if you're passionate about it, outside of your immediate gaming circles, you may find yourself defensive. And in fact, I was just watching a documentary on WoW, World of Warcraft, and a man who was in law school, and was a very avid, 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, not crazy, but, that's avid for being in law school, WoW player, had never told his friends. And so they did this bit where he was at a bar with his friends from school, other aspiring lawyers, and he told them. And they were just jaw-dropped, that this was going on. But he just felt that they would not understand this part of his life, but clearly he was doing well.
So have there been studies from peer-reviewed journals which do show negative effects from video gaming?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I'm not saying that is not there. What I'm saying is when you do a meta-analysis and you do a review of the literature that takes into account a variety of the things that we know contribute to, for instance, violence, that yes, there is an effect if it's violence or if it's addiction. Yes, these things happen. There are some people who, suffer obesity. There are some who certainly have problems with shyness. But to characterize all young men or middle-aged men, now the average gaming age is 37, as all being violent, addicted, obese, and shy is just grossly unfair and stereotypical.
You're listening to Skeptically Speaking, and we'll be right back with Dr. Jayne Gackenbach and Teace Snyder and their book, Play Reality, How Video Games Are Changing Everything, after this.
Skeptically Speaking wants you to question everything. To be a part of the discussion, call and record your question on our listener question line at Speak 73101. That's 773-257-3101. Long-distance charges may apply. Sunday nights at 6 Mountain Time, join our Ustream chat room to listen and ask questions as we record interviews live. Just click the Listen Online button at skepticallyspeaking.com. You can also email your questions and comments to live@skepticallyspeaking.com, or if you're on Twitter, tweet us at Skeptical Radio. To find out where Skeptically Speaking airs near you, to listen to past episodes, or download the weekly podcast, check out our website at skepticallyspeaking.com. While you're there, follow the links to connect with us on our Facebook page, our Twitter feed, or to subscribe to the show in iTunes. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Skeptically Speaking. I'm Julieta Delos Santos, sitting in for Desiree Schell. My guests today are Dr. Jayne Gackenbach and Teace Snyder. We're talking about their book, Play Reality, How Video Games Are Changing Everything, about the myths behind video gaming. Now, for this particular segment, I'll be asking questions about video game addiction. Mm-hmm. So what is the criteria for a video game addict?
Okay, what we use, and what I think is fair to use, is the one that's being set up for internet addiction, and that it basically goes through 5 or 6 criterion that you have to have all of them, and then one from a secondary list, which is typical. And so it's things like you're playing longer and longer, you're hiding that you're playing, when you're away from gaming, it causes you, all kinds of stress, and then things like it's interfering with your job or interfering with your relationships, those sorts of things. The point is, any 1 or 2 or 3, and I'm just touching on a few of them, does not necessarily mean addiction. But if they begin to mount, then of course you're into addiction. Now, that said, there's a difference between addiction, meaning a behavior that's causing suffering, and being passionate in an early learning cycle.
All right, well, what she's referring to is the fact that I played 110 hours of Skyrim in the first month that it was out, and that's because I've been waiting for it for 4.5 years. I booked my time so that I'd be able to play it. A lot of people who don't play video games or who are looking from it from an outsider perspective would interpret that kind of behavior to be addiction. And that is not because that's an accurate assessment of what had occurred. It's because there's a societal misuse of the word. That was an allocated period of time for me to engage on a healthy level. Although it was a great deal of amount of play, it was within the framework of my life, very much acceptable. And that's the difference between addiction and just like having a healthy activity of whether or not it hurts you or negatively affects you or your lifestyle.
And before Skyrim came out, he told his girlfriend and he told me, okay, Skyrim's coming out. Now you have to assume that and we were, well warned and we knew this was going to happen. And that certainly helped a lot for my understanding, and I'm sure his girlfriend's understanding as well, for what he was doing. I mean, the same thing happens. I'm a crafter. And so before a craft show, I'm going crazy. I need more of this kind of frame, or I need more of that. And I'm spending a huge amount of hours. Or if you're a hockey player, just before the season starts, you're out there on the rink at 3:30 in the morning because it's the only time you get ice time. We all get passionate. That doesn't mean that you're addicted to it. But when it begins to take over your life, and we're talking hours, of 15 hours a day, and every day, 7 days a week, and it's going on for months and months and months and a year, and you never leave your basement, and you have no social relationships other than your friends online, which is a social relationship, and you're not holding down a job, and you're not being in a relationship, then we're beginning to talk about, okay, there's some problems here. And so it's I think clinically we can talk about what is addiction, and then the estimates are 10 to 15% of gamers will become addicted at some time or another. But the word addiction, as Teace mentioned, is grossly overused. It basically means anything you do a lot and you're passionate about.
Now, at the beginning, you had mentioned that the criteria for a video game addict was going to be, or similar to that used for an internet addict.
Yeah, that's the criterion we've been using, yeah.
Okay, so basically that derives from the fact that there is currently no DSM criteria for a gaming addict, nor is there for an internet addict. So there's one that's been proposed that is being used as the framework for a gaming addict.
Yeah.
And how does video game addiction, how does that compare to other addictions, such as alcoholism or drugs or gambling?
Well, first place, video game addiction is a behavioral addiction like gambling, okay? Mm-hmm. And there's a whole issue about, can a behavioral addiction be a real addiction because it's not chemical? But it does change brain chemistry, and you get into this whole big long argument there. And so as a behavior, I think there are behavioral addictions that can, again, whole thing is it creates suffering, as versus, results in a sense of well-being, sense of accomplishment associated with flow, which is, of course, is what we see so often in gaming, is these kids feel like, I've done something well, I've done something good. And so my dad's constantly ragging on me about blah, 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 I'm this, I'm that. But hey, I really did something well here. And one young man I know that I interviewed talked about it was the only place where he felt good about himself because his home life circumstance was so bad. So do you call that young man an addict? Do you call him he's coping without going into drugs or other kinds of seriously deviant behaviors with a very difficult situation? It gets complicated and subtle. Like
my mother said, between 10 to 15% of people who try video games will subsequently meet the proposed criteria for addiction. But if you juxtapose that to a more well-established addiction like cigarettes, approximately 85% of people who try that end up becoming addicted.
Now, there's also something else mentioned in the book when it talks about addiction, and that is something that was referred to as the high of immersion. Mm-hmm. So if you could please describe that and why the high of immersion is so addictive.
Okay, so that's also just a general point that gamers they tend to joke about, just because, in the games that we play, we're these huge, amazing heroes that the universe centers around. Everyone is depending on, get the girl, get the best equipment, live happily ever after into endless sequels of the game. whereby in real life we're sitting on a couch clicking endlessly while staring at a screen. That high of immersion does not come from the fact that you're clicking while staring forward, because if you remove all of that reward structure and all of that positive reinforcement, you're just some dude staring blankly forward. So that's what the high of immersion regards, is that when you get that invested in an alternative reality, particularly one as rewarding or encouraging as video games can be, it's like a high.
That doesn't necessarily mean that it's addictive. So, for instance, I've had students here say, well, I don't play WoW, World of Warcraft, during the school year because I know I couldn't put it down. I mean, I love it too much. Or I only let myself play one round of a first-person shooter, 15 minutes, that's it, before I have to go back to studying. They understand and they love how it makes them feel great, and they enjoy it and how immersive it is, but they're quite able to control it.
Now, is this high of immersion, is this more prevalent in certain types of games than other types of games?
Yeah, I imagine it's probably going to be a lot more immersive to be in engaging and more immersive games. Like, you're probably not going to experience that same high playing Pac-Man unless you're playing it on a very, very high level. And so it's the skill-based association, it's the familiarity, it's a lot of different variables that factor into it. But the more you play, the more complicated the games are, and the better you are at them, all factor into that.
And basically, in the media studies literature, what they talk about is flow, which is Csikszentmihalyi's idea that if you balance challenge and skill, not too much challenge, then you get frustrated. Not too much skill, then you get bored. But you balance those, then you experience flow. That's that immersive, that sense of being sort of one with whatever the activity is. You can feel it on the ice in hockey. You can feel it playing a violin. There's lots of places in life you can feel it. But it's one of the major game studies researchers, John Sherry, pointed out that it's as if Csikszentmihalyi developed flow, or video games were developed in order specifically to elicit flow. It is so perfect at balancing challenge with skill. And when you do that, when that's at that razor point of balance, that's joy. That's just a transcendent kind of experience.
You're listening to Skeptically Speaking, and I'm talking with Dr. Jayne Gackenbach and Teace Snyder about play reality, how video games are changing everything. We are discussing the myths behind video gaming. So I'm just sort of wondering, we've talked a little bit about the negative effects behind video gaming, but what about the positive effects that video gaming can have?
Oh yeah, there's lots. I'd say you can start with attention. I have another book coming out on video game play and consciousness, and one of the things that is becoming much heralded is that the attentional skills of gamers are just superior. And not only are they, in other words, that they can do complex attentional tasks in ways that someone who doesn't game cannot. And even if you train, say, for about 20 hours, you'll get an improvement in attention. But nothing like someone who comes into the lab with 10,000 hours over a lifespan. And in fact, that's the criterion to be considered an expert. And this attentional skills, the ability to focus on something, to pick up things in the peripheral vision, to solve problems very quickly in this very limited memory workspace, these attentional skills show transfer. And that's apparently quite unique. There's a whole bunch of other spatial and cognitive kinds of skills. They're superior in spatial abilities. In other words, if they hear a knock on an engine, they can tell you where in the engine that sound is coming from, find their way out of the woods, that sort of thing. They're superior in problem solving. I think one of the best illustrations, if you look at WoW and the kinds of when a guild gets together to take down some kind of massive org, and it's going to take 20 of them, and they all have to meet at a certain time, and they have to each have an assigned role, and they have to have certain weapons that they've been able to accumulate, and they have to work cohesively together, including in some cases some fairly sophisticated statistical analysis, and they do that week after week after week. Basically, they're learning team cooperation, they're learning leadership, they're learning interpersonal skills, they're learning problem solving, they're learning statistics. The kind of skill set, and that's just with one kind of game. It depends on the game you play, but the skill sets are just huge, and it's fun to learn these. So you may not necessarily learn content, but you do learn skill sets. Now, that said, I had a colleague in Italy who insisted his kids wanted to play video games, and he said, okay, fine, but only ones in English. And then when he did a postdoc in New Jersey, his kids could speak English because they'd learned it in the video game. And that, and so, I mean, that's just one. And you get into some of the, civilization games. They're quite accurate to history. And so the whole sort of distinction between content and process in learning becomes, again, these boundaries become very merged in, I think, the current video games.
Now, is there just as much literature about the positive effects as there are about the negative effects?
No, and that's changing. That is definitely changing. But basically what happens is if you don't find a negative effect, it's harder to publish. That's one of the points that Ferguson made in his review of the violence and gaming literature. And that's not just true of video game violence research. You see it over and over again. Nobody, particularly in academic, we don't want to be prejudiced, but there is this subtext. And so that certain things carry currency, and that's the only thing that can be looked at. And so you can see some serious blind eyes in academics. Now, that is changing. In fact, I've talked to some colleagues who would be surprised to learn that there is still as much negative attitude out there because they're just so excited about the positive effects that are emerging and the potential use. I think particularly in the Games for Health movement. There's a journal, there's an association, there's an annual meeting, and that is using games, serious games, or just what are the healthful benefits of playing regular games, as I've been talking about. And so it's just exploding. I was thinking about it. I've been doing this research for about a decade, and in that decade, there are now several professional organizations. There's at least a half dozen to a dozen journals. It's just exploding. There's graduate programs, graduate students. In the 30 years I've been doing research on dreams, we have one organization, one conference, and 2 journals. So I'm very aware of the difference in terms of what the academic community is getting excited about.
Now, I'm just wondering, Teace, because you are a gamer, have video games affected you positively in some ways?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's not like a long, drawn-out addiction or abuse or like masochistic hobby that I've had. It's something that I've enjoyed continuously through the duration of my life and has yielded very positive rewards and benefits. I mean, that's either directly associated with the fact that I can brag about what I've accomplished in a game, or that I can remember that accomplishment with people who are playing alongside of me. I can look back on my life and the times in which I've played far more, and it's fairly free of stress as a result of the association between stress relief and video game play. So there are any number of things. I mean, also, I haven't had a nightmare in 14 or 15 years, and that's because I've been playing first-person shooters just about that entire time. So
that's my research. That basically, particularly in those action genre, those young men seem not to have nightmares, or if they have something that we would call a nightmare, they think it's great fun.
Can you just give a little quick example about that?
Oh, sure. There's a study that recently got published. I looked at military gamers, and so we asked them about a dream they'd had during the military. It didn't have to be a nightmare, just a dream they had during the military. Well, needless to say, they were very violent. There was lots of combat going on, and they were certainly very, very intense. But if you asked them afterward how they responded to that dream, the high-end gamers, first place in the dream, they were more empowered. They knew what to do. They fought back. Well, and afterward, their response to it was they felt energized. They felt awe. And I'm just finished a study, which I'm going to be presenting next week at a dream conference, looking at students and their nightmares. And it was basically some of the same sorts of things. For males. For females, it just gets, you're in a whole other world.
So you mentioned earlier, Jayne, that you do have a future book coming out in September?
Yes. Yeah, well, we have Play Reality, which is, of course, released now in September, an edited scholarly book on video game play and consciousness.
And what is that about?
So there's a chapter on attention. There's a couple of chapters on dreams. There's a few chapters on some of the archetypal literature, Jung's approach, and looking at the characters in games as archetypal figures, and how is it that, from a collective, a deep unconscious level, we engage in those. There's the game transfer phenomenon, the idea that what you're doing in a game, you find yourself doing it in real life.
So I was playing a lot of Splinter Cell at one point, and I begrudgingly had to get up and go outside to feed myself. So I had to go to the bank to get money, And Splinter Cell, for people who don't know, is a game where you're basically a Black Ops ninja going in and out of buildings, shooting lights and people to avoid detection. So when I went into the bank, I started to note the places of people and cameras just like I would have in the game, and subsequently ran through the scenario in my head of how I could go about killing them all and getting away with the funds without being detected. But that's not exactly something I had a prerogative to do, so I didn't. But nevertheless, it went through my head as a result of playing so many games.
It's game transfer, and there's a million examples like that. And, and it basically, if you're doing something over and over and over again in a game, and then you go into a similar real-life situation. I know a colleague of mine was driving cars, and he went out, after 4 hours of doing it, he went out into the highway, and he says, my God, I kept wanting to run off onto the sidewalk. And it's, you stop yourself because you recognize, okay, this is not a good idea to do this in this situation. But what gets media attention is the horrible exceptions, where there was a young man in Florida, for instance, who acted out, I think it was from Grand Theft Auto, a horrible situation where he ended up killing somebody. And of course that got a huge amount of media attention. And yeah, okay, it may be related to the game transfer phenomena, but that's the exception. That is not the rule in it, but it's the exceptions that get so much attention.
And Teace, I understand that you're now working on your first feature film?
Yeah, I am. That's actually, I went to film school a couple of years ago. I did a few shorts that have gone through the festival circuit, but now I'm producing my first feature film, and we're probably going to be going into principal photography starting in September.
And where can people read about this first feature film project?
Well, there's not much information up on it now. If people wanted to check out my work, the best bet, although my website's currently under construction, is to go to that, which is www.teace.ca. Or if they're more interested in looking into that project specifically, they can look it up on Indiegogo and just type in Hold Me, because that's the title of the film. And I'm actually trying to raise part of the funds through that.
Jayne and Teace, thank you so much for your time and best wishes on your future endeavors. You'll find links to Jayne Gackenbach and Teace Snyder and their book Play Reality on our website at skepticallyspeaking.com. While you're there, click the links to Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, so you can keep up with show news, and to iTunes, where you can subscribe to the show, listen to past episodes, or leave a review. And we'll be back with the Petri Dish, a live panel from LogiCON 2012 featuring kids talking about how to get other kids interested in science. That's next on Skeptically Speaking right after this.
On the next episode of Skeptically Speaking, guest host Marie-Claire Shanahan spends the hour looking at the infrastructure that makes our increasingly urbanized modern lives possible. She's joined by journalist Scott Hewler, author of the book On the Grid, A Plot of Land, An Average Neighborhood, and the Systems That Make Our World Work. And she'll speak to environmental journalist and urban design critic Tim Deschamps about his population density blog Per Square Mile. That's next week on Skeptically Speaking, on your local radio station, or online at skepticallyspeaking.com.
Thanks, everyone, for coming to this panel. I think this is very important, especially to have young people speak about science in a way that is comfortable for them and it gets them involved. So what I'll do first is have the panelists introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Alex. I'm a grade 5, 10-year-old boy, and my school is Garneau School.
I'm Jayden, and I'm 11 as well, and I also go to Garneau.
Hi, I'm Evan. I'm about 13 or so, now that I remember. I go to McKernan School, and yeah.
I'm Alex. I'm 11, and I go to McKernan School.
All right, so I'm going to make this really broad to begin with. Tell us about you and science, your relationship.
I've always been interested in science and math, but the thing that started getting me really interested and started coming to LogiCON last year is I actually watched a show. It's Into the Universe with Stephen Hawking, because they explain lots of kind of advanced science things, but not too simply that it's not actually advanced anymore, but simple enough so almost anyone can get it, but still understand it.
So were you interested in science before that, and that just made it more powerful, or is that really your first experience?
Yeah, I was always interested in science, but that made it a lot more powerful.
My relationship with science, I would say everything. Science connects to, everything that pretty much exists. It's, pretty much existence itself, so there's pretty much no way to avoid science.
I like robotics a lot, and I like Lego, too.
So why do you like it?
I really like making things that can do anything that you want them to do. And if you can do that yourself, then you don't have to wait for someone else to make it.
Booyah. All right. That was insightful. Good. Go ahead.
Well, I think for me it was mainly when I was young, and like for puzzles and things, a lot of the themes on them were space. So from there I kind of wanted to learn, whoa, what are these things? What do they do? And that kind of inspired me to learn more about science.
So, do you guys think that there was one person at all who sort of affected your interest in science or not?
I think it was my parents first that just sort of started explaining it to me and just kind of started it going and then excelled from there.
Now, that's where you first got involved in science. That's what started it. So what keeps you interested in science?
Well, for me, it's kind of like you can never know everything about science. There's always something new, and that just infinite source of interest in science and new things to learn.
Yeah, I just like learning things, so especially about science.
Okay, so what kinds of things interest you? So we got Lego, we got robotics.
I like space too, and like things that blow up.
Everyone likes things that blow up.
I think for me it's mainly just the new discoveries, and you can't always learn everything, so you're trying to keep up with as much as you can.
How I keep interested in science is because there's always more to learn, and the more you know about the universe, the better you understand it. And so what keeps me interested is things like LogiCON, which teach you things, and then also I read lots of science books.
Like what?
One of my favorite ones, it's The Grand Design, and it's by Stephen Hawking, and also The Black Hole War.
Where do you want to take this? Where do you want to go in science? Like, do you want to work in science, or do you want this to be a hobby, or what are you thinking? Dream big.
In terms of science, in most like sort of situations of motivation, it's kind of how to make the world a better place. Like, see what you can do to improve things.
Give me an example.
There's a lot of examples. Well, one of the main examples we're fighting right now is climate change and global warming, and trying to sort of enlighten the human race that what we're doing is quite destructive.
So where do you see your role in that?
Well, my role is one way is kind of like almost explaining it to people that this world isn't like kind of an infinite source of resources. We have to do some work too for it. And also like just seeing what technology we can create to make more sustainable living.
So both the science communication and the technology itself
Yes.
to change the world.
I feel mostly the same way. I think making the world a better place, and because science has such a deep relationship with almost everything else, it becomes a lot easier to do that.
At this point, I'm not really sure where I want to take science. At this point, I'm just interested in learning more, and the more I learn, the more clear the path will be.
Yeah, see where it takes you.
Yeah.
So where is it taking you right now? Because it sounds like it's a lot about space.
I'm not quite sure at this point. I'm mainly focusing on, as you pointed out, outer space, and
I would like to point out that you're all young and you don't have to sort this out right now. Not for the purposes of this panel, at least. So maybe if you could tell me about one specific time that you can remember that really either struck you as wow, I really want to pursue this within science, or something that resonated with you in some way that made you think that science was even cooler than it was.
I would say when I went to Jasper, the ice fields, and spent about 4 days with Steve McLean. Yeah, it was really exciting just seeing someone who was so kind of, like, he had been to space, he saw the ice fields from above. It was just an amazing experience, and that really showed me how cool science was.
And that's an interesting point, that science doesn't happen in a lab, right?
It happens everywhere.
Exactly.
In grade 5, when I learned about circuits, then I really liked that unit. It just made so much sense.
Okay, now why did it make sense?
Because I knew I could use it.
You're a very practical person. That's a compliment.
Yeah.
one of the things was last year, after it's one of the experiences, because we had all watched the same show, Into the Universe with Stephen Hawking, and basically we started talking about it, and all of the group of us that had watched it, we all got super excited, and even some other people that hadn't watched it but still understood the same basic thing from other things that they've read and watched, and we basically all got really excited with it, and it was something that in certain ways was complex, but we all understood, even at a grade 5-6 level.
So why do you think you understood?
Basically, it was not as much as we understood it, but we had a feeling that we really knew what we were talking about, even though we didn't entirely, but just at the time, seemed like it, and it was basically all of us were realizing that science is part of all of our lives.
Yeah, it's like finding the logic in things. It's like, oh, so that's why. Why is a very good question.
Why is a fantastic question.
Science mostly digs into understanding of certain things. So I think that that's been my main motivation, to just learn more, to have a deeper understanding, to know more.
No, and that's especially, I think, not necessarily for you guys, but a lot of people your age are really trying to figure out the world, and they don't necessarily use science to help them figure that out.
Not always, but usually, 'cause science is just, I suppose in a way, so logical to think of. It just has relations to everything, thinks into it, and pulls the answer out.
Oh, you guys. All right, so, has there ever been a time that an adult tried to encourage you to become involved in science in a way that was spectacularly unsuccessful?
Sometimes my teachers were like that.
Yeah.
Good answer.
Like my school teachers, not my teachers at home and that kind of thing, like my parents and that sort of thing, but my school teachers, sometimes there's a bit left to be desired. Like they tell us these things, but they don't tell us why these things are happening. Like the different sort of lines left by glaciers when they're moving. They say they're called, I think, like moraines. I'm not quite sure on the word, but I think that's it. And they didn't really tell us why that's happening and that sort of thing. Like they told us the information that we should know, but not like why we should know the information and
why it was important?
Sort of, yeah, and like why these things happened.
So it was more fact-oriented
Yeah.
rather than a process.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have that experience?
I think mine is mostly with Alberta education. I think that because everybody in the class, in as early as kindergarten and grade 1, we all had this common interest for science, but we all mostly liked to look at sort of space and aerodynamics, but we didn't actually get those units until grade 5. So I think it would have catapulted us, all of us, even higher if they had just done that.
I think one of the problems is, I don't know if you guys are terribly representative of your age group. So that being said, do you think that the other kids would have thought the same thing? Or do you think it just would have helped the people that were already sort of going that direction anyway?
Well, there was a large group of us that had the same idea.
Interesting.
We all shared the same common ideas. So I think it would have.
Interesting. What do you think?
I don't think that even my teachers have done that, so... They don't fail spectacularly, but sometimes they can't teach me as much as I would like.
Yeah, when I was younger, my teachers almost scared me away from science. They sort of say it's like all complicated and that kind of thing, but once you sort of get a basic level of understanding, it just continues, it excels. So they never described it happening like that. And it kind of scared me away from science in some of the younger grades.
Right. Well, then maybe let's help the adults in the room here. Like, you guys are already very interested. If everybody in this room wanted to create a bunch of you, how would they do that? How can they get kids involved in science without alienating them, without boring them, without going too slowly?
Oh, showing them the possibilities. Like, this can happen. You can be able to do this. Like, in Alex's situation with robots, you can actually create, like, a robot to do this task. It is so interesting and that kind of thing. Kind of, like, just seed it, and then once you sort of, like, seed it in their head, it just grows.
So maybe don't start with the science itself, but the product of the science.
Yes.
Awesome.
And then, like, show them, like, the benefits, like, how the world could be better in that situation and that kind of thing, like I mentioned before. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
I completely agree with Evan. I think showing them sort of the light at the end of the tunnel and saying, and look at all these possibilities, I think that that's a better way.
But when do you make that connection between this is ultimately what we can do with science, and when do you sort of show them, and this is sort of how you can play a role in that?
I think it's largely depending on the person. When they try and get to there, then the steps would be more important.
And maybe, like, give them opportunities. Like, don't say, if they seem to be going, don't say, give them an option to go and go and do something that's science related. If they don't want to, don't make them, or else it'll feel like, something that they don't want to do and that they're being forced to do it, and that can drive them away from science.
Yeah, I agree with Jayne. You shouldn't force people to do science.
Yeah.
Because that just makes them hate it.
Yeah, sometimes you want to do things out of your own will.
Often.
Yeah, in most situations. So sometimes being forced to do something will drive you away from it. Like just showing it to them instead of shoving it at them.
Mm-hmm. And give them the resources to be able to do what you wanted them to do, but don't pressure them to do it.
So is that what your parents did?
Yeah, I'd say.
I'd say so.
Mostly.
They just offered it to you and hopefully you picked up the ball?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyways, yeah.
I think so.
Very nice. All right, and I'm going to open this up to the audience at this point. I have some more questions if you guys don't, but I have a feeling you do.
So you guys spoke a little bit about role models. For many of you, it seems like your parents are role models. I'm one of these scientists that would love to be a role model to people everywhere. My question is, what do you guys want us to be doing to be better role models for you? How can we give you guys more of these seeds as role models?
Like, the way to become a role model is just sort of like what I described before, like seeding the kid with interesting pieces of science in which they then kind of grab onto that and just continue.
Well, that's interesting, though. So who, the people that you usually decide are role models to you, they're usually people that you like and respect, right?
Yeah.
To a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So probably just being likable at the start
Yeah.
is a good idea.
I
And
think
understandable, comprehensible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
adults being role models, they kind of need to know you to a certain degree as well, to see where your interest in science may want to go and build on that area. And once you're even a little bit way through that area, once you show the possibilities, I think that would be.
So basically, they should watch you for cues.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Don't come up with something right up front.
If they seem to kind of be interested in science, give them the resources to continue, or else it might die off and they might not be interested in science again for a long time. But if you give them the resources to continue, they may continue that forever.
So you want to prepare many, many paths for whatever the child.
That's fantastic. Okay, well now you mentioned resources. So what are some of the resources that you guys use?
Wikipedia. It's my favorite resource.
Do you have anything to warn people about in regards to Wikipedia?
Well, Wikipedia can potentially be edited by almost anyone, so you might want to find, some more resources too, like science textbooks or other websites you find on Google, that kind of thing.
Yeah, anything that you see on Wikipedia, you might want to search it up or look for it in some sort of other book just to make sure someone who doesn't even have an account just went up and typed some random thing in.
Yeah, Wikipedia needs to be backed up 100% of the time.
Actually, they changed it so that not as many people can change the articles.
I love you guys.
Yeah, I think there are certain ones that are locked,
I think it's
and other ones aren't.
but I believe most Wikipedia sites you can actually add anything, but they hold on to your IP if you don't sign in.
Right. So what about other resources?
A lot of kind of influential people that you know, like science professors that you know, that kind of thing. That's really useful since that's what they do. That's what their job is. So they would definitely know. So
right.
It's good to not only ask digital devices, but ask physical people.
Real people.
Yeah.
Great.
And the Edmonton Public Library is a good source. They have some really interesting books. So if they're older and they can read a lot more advanced books, that can be a good resource once they're more interested in science.
I think for me it's mostly whatever school shows you the resources for this project. They'll teach you to use different resources and usually end up using the same things, mostly backed up websites other than Wikipedia, and books.
Books, great. Where do you get information on robotics?
Well, sometimes you can do summer camps at the U of A.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
And even here.
And my dad can teach me a lot of it.
And
Awesome.
Sometimes even just talking to people that don't even specialize in that, you can notice that they actually know a lot about these things. And anyway, two minds is better than one. And then also you could seed them with science that then they would almost get interested in science too. So it's you get 2 pluses from talking to people about it.
So how do you guys evaluate resources? What's a good resource versus a shady?
I think mainly if you can take a look through the whole thing before scouring it for information, you can just scan it and see, because usually you'd have a very, very slight amount of knowledge before you even start researching more. So with that slight knowledge, if you find a couple things that come against it, but you already have backed up that that is true, then that can be considered a bad resource. But if you can't find it, then you still usually want to back it up with one or two more things.
Yeah. And use logic, and if you can't quite tell and it kind of seems like it might not be but you're not entirely sure, ask someone else. And then that way, if you think it is, and they can confirm that, or if it's not.
Yeah, and like if you find something that doesn't really make sense, then you want to kind of like look at that and see if that doesn't work, but yeah.
I think that children are characterized by their wonderful ability to explore. Do you guys agree with that? And how important is it to actually be able to explore in science and in scientific ideas? And also, how would you do that?
Exploring is probably one of the main factors of science, trying to expand your like repertoire of knowledge and finding like in terms of resources too, like finding other resources that agree with it. When resources agree, that's a good thing.
At a younger age, when you're starting to get involved in science, experimental science is what you really want to dig into. You're not going to get very accurate with theoretical science at all, probably. So, just exploring, figuring out this does this does this, that'll build a very basic form of knowledge. And from there, that, I think, is going to also contribute to your want to learn and to expand.
If you explore and you gain extra knowledge, then you can explore even more and get more advanced knowledge. And by the time you've explored for a small bit of time, you could be way higher than you were before. Or if you hadn't explored deeply in science, and if you had just left it and waited till later, because the science community, they discover things almost every day. Then if you wait at all, then eventually there'll be more stuff that you'll want to learn, but you won't, and you'll have to go back.
I think that exploring in science is about the most important thing. You can't get anything better than just actually doing it.
Yeah, and that's one problem that our school teachers have, is they don't really let us explore. They give us what the curriculum wants us to know, and they just make us stick with that.
Are there any games that you found that help you explore and enjoy science?
There are a lot of cool physics simulation games that I find interesting.
Give us some ideas for the parents in the audience who want to create science-friendly children.
There's one called Powder Game that's on the internet. It's okay, but I find it really interesting being able to like combine different things to create other things. And also, I like Minecraft because that gives you the ability to build, to like excel your stuff, have almost a world to try things out in. Yeah, I find that interesting too.
Warning, highly addictive.
Yeah.
All right.
Almost any game, especially if it's science fiction, sometimes if you question if this could be true, you can get into really deep thoughts about how science and things that are made up, that are science fiction, can actually exist.
I don't think that Minecraft is that great because it doesn't have anything to do with science, really.
Well, in some ways.
It's
more about building things, and you can experiment.
The ability to explore the world and like to see what else there is.
But it's not really science. You get to build stuff, and that's
there's the coding that you put into modding that game.
You don't really do that unless you actually are the one who creates the mod.
Okay, I have a question. And this is the last question, because we are probably out of time. What is science to you?
Science is everything. Science is every piece of everything. Science is kind of, I don't know, in my opinion, it's just a word for existence in a way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I really think that science is one of the best ways to learn things with, because you can't learn anything without science, because we are science.
This is a metaphysical group up here. All right.
Science literally makes the world go around.
Succinct. All right.
I think science is just this diverse way to understand almost anything you can, And I agree with Jayden. It does make the world go round. It makes it a lot, even maybe in some things, the only way to understand things.
And with that, thank you very much to the panelists for being here.
Bring it on. The skeptics await your letter. Your call, tweet, homing, pigeon, whatever. Desiree Shell, gonna raise a little hell, break the spell of Pavlov's spells. Cause we're skeptically speaking on mind reading tarot cards and witches, psychics, and their spoon-bending mind tricks. All the humbug, flim-flam, frauds and shams, the charlatan woo. I don't think you understand. It's the hocus pocus, out of focus locus, eroding the brain, making gains on the hopeless. Let the crystal ball fall, smash on the floor. Leave the pieces alone, we don't need them anymore. Just a microscope, telescope, magnifier, reading in between the lines of these lies. Bring it on. The skeptics await your letter. Your call, tweet, homing, pigeon, whatever. Desiree Shell, gonna raise a little hell, metaphorically that is. Cause we're skeptically speaking.